You're listening to the Agent and the Fan podcast with sports agent Chris Leible and fan Lou Columna.
All right, so we're here with Tim Dierkes. He's the owner of MLB Trade Rumors. As I said, it's the preeminent site if you're a baseball fan, or actually other sports as well. You cover every sport, Tim. It's a great site if you're a baseball fan and you're not on it. You're missing out a lot. Tim's somebody I got to know years ago, and he's an awesome guy and very on top of everything in the world of sports, but specifically it is named baseball trade, MLB Trade Rumors, right?
Yeah. We've been doing it for almost 19 years now. Chris, you and I go way back, and
Yep.
it's our passion. Just a bunch of guys who love this hot stove stuff. We live and breathe it.
Yeah, and it's the thing that I love about it is that when I go into an article and read what you guys are writing, you guys are knowledgeable and on the inside knowledgeable, because sometimes you see things or you hear things and people talking and they don't know what they're talking about, and they're talking out of a voice of authority, and then you wonder why people aren't getting the right information and things like that. You guys are really knowledgeable, and for somebody who's in the business, I can really appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate that compliment. I take a lot of pride in our writing team having knowledge of all 30 teams, which I think is pretty hard. And I will say too, my guys who write for the website every day are better than me at that.
No, everybody's good though. You guys are all good, and honestly, I look at it for other sports as well, and it's fantastic. So we'll get into that a little bit more for sure. But Lou and I we started the show, and it's our free agent episode. We obviously the season's over now. It's the off season has begun, and you guys just came out with your great article. I know it's a lot of your fans and supporters' favorite article probably of the year is your top 50 free agents and your kind of predictions and prognostications of who's going where and why. And I think that's what I wanted to talk about today a little bit. Lou is a huge Yankees fan, and he's the fan on the show. Tim, I think you know this, but I started in the front office of the Mets, so my heart's a little bit with the Mets. And right now, as you know, I'm still a certified agent, but I'm not with a company at the moment. So I'm a little bit of a fan in a way as well, but I'm always looking on the inside of the game. So obviously, and this is a subject for Lou to near and dear to Lou's heart, is you have one free agent. He's the number one free agent on your list, obviously. Of course, a great player, very young for a free agent, which you don't always see. And it's Juan Soto. And when I look at your list, you have his numbers are so, above everybody else's, and rightly so.
Yeah.
But it brings to that question, who's going to pull the trigger on him? Who's going to reach the numbers that he wants, or will they reach the numbers that he wants, or the ones you guys are predicting? And how is that all going to go down? What are your, I read the article, but what are your personal thoughts?
I do think that there maybe were some other forecasters who went above $600 million for Juan Soto. So even though, at the time when we were deliberating all this in October, we kind of felt like it was somewhat aggressive when we saw other people, I think a lot of people are in that 600 plus range. And I think for Scott Boras, 600 is a round number that he needs to achieve or wants to achieve. And then I think that, as you being an agent know, the average annual value is important here. What you might want to say the record is right now is perhaps up for debate based on how you value Shohei Ohtani's contracts. But I think that if Soto were to get something like $47 million a year, or, a nice round number would be 50. If he can get those benchmarks, then, Boras is going to have the record in both fronts and be able to hang on to that for a long time. So I think that would be important to the agent and the player. And I think just with the amount of pressure on the Yankees and the Mets to sign him, plus, a field that looks like it could be pretty strong. The Blue Jays were, fully bidding at the same price on Ohtani last winter. It sounds like they're being aggressive this winter. There's, I think, meetings set up with some other teams as well. So it's not just Yankees Mets here for Soto. So I feel like it's a generational free agent. You don't see that type of player hit the market at that age.
So Tim, I agree with all that. What do you think? Chris and I have this debate all the time as the fan and he the agent. We know Scott Boras is going to go for the last bottom dollar, but does it get to a point when we're talking money where he's not giving a hometown discount, we know, but is he willing to forego? Because you hear rumblings that he doesn't really like the West Coast. He likes to stay on the East Coast. Will he forego $5-10 million on this contract to stay on the East Coast? That's the first question I have for you.
I mean, I don't know how sophisticated that idea is that he really wants to be on the East Coast. I mean, he was with the Padres. I don't know that he had a problem with San Diego. I don't believe he's on record, with anything like that. So, having done this for a long time, we're always trying to kind of find little breadcrumbs about what might push a player to a certain area. And, sometimes the geographic stuff, those rumors prove true, but usually the player is becomes a little more transparent. Whereas, with a major free agent like Soto, who really seems like he's going for the last dollar, I don't think he's going to have a problem with the West Coast or, any kind of geographic area.
Good. So the second question I have for you, this is to Chris's point at the beginning of the show. Your site has become so popular with fans as well as with agents. Do you ever get agents saying like, "Hey man, you got my guy ranked as a 5 free agent, and my guy's really a 3," kind of like Madden? Do you get that from agents?
Yeah, we get that. We only get it a little bit because I think that they understand we're not really going to change it based on that type of stuff. And then we're not going to get it on the Juan Sotos of the world just because I feel Scott Boras has better things to do. But sometimes we'll get it like, hey, how did you not put this guy into the honorable mention section at the bottom? Or, if your cutoff is $10 million to be on the list, how come my guy isn't number 45 or my guy's better than this other player? That'll usually come from more of your boutique agent who has a lot invested in like one single free agent that winter. I've never really been swayed by those things. I would imagine teams are kind of the same way when agents start bringing their packages of data that is usually pretty cherry picked.
Awesome. So getting started with that, what your top 5 free agents? Where do you think? I mean, we know it's early. Where do you think they're going to land, give or take?
So yeah, we each kind of made our picks. We spent like a month working out the contracts, me and the entire MLB Trade Rumors team. We spent a lot of time on the contracts. With the team picks, we feel like just your batting average on doing that successfully is really, really low. I mean, if you can bet 200 on those picks, you're doing well. So I can tell you what I picked, but I don't really have a ton of confidence in it. I put Soto on the Yankees, but part of the reason I put him on the Yankees was that I had to make 49 other picks. And if I put him on the Mets, then I didn't know who I would reasonably put on the Yankees that, I felt like I would feel good about. I didn't really want to put Bregman there, and I didn't really want to put Snell there. And so when you're trying to just put this puzzle together in a way that presents like a somewhat decent narrative, honestly, it was just easier for me to put Soto on the Yankees, more so than like I think that he's more likely to sign there. Corbin Burns, I put on the Red Sox, probably for no other reason that they're telegraphing that they're going to be a lot more aggressive on starting pitching than they have. Bregman, I struggled with. My colleagues picked the Astros, which is totally viable. I put him on the Blue Jays. Snell I put on the Mets, and all four of us put Willy Adames on the Giants, which is very typical of this process. We came out with that list maybe a week ago. Some information often comes out even in that first week where you're like, well, I really don't like that pick anymore, and that information wasn't available when we were publishing. And so we all put Willy Adames on the Giants. And then since then, there's been a report of, maybe them limiting payroll a bit or not being as aggressive as we kind of assumed that they were going to be. So if I were to go back, I would probably try to find a new fit for Adames.
Awesome. And do you have better relationships with certain teams more than others? How do you gather your data?
We have some pretty good team connections. Some of those people can be are pretty tight-lipped. Agents I think are a little freer with talking, and everyone is different though. I mean, at our heart, we are kind of an aggregator or a curator of information. So a lot of our knowledge is coming from reading and consuming and debating and thinking about, what the journalists who are following the team are putting out there. So me and Steve Adams and Anthony Franco and maybe Dar McDonald, we'll definitely talk to agents and we'll talk to team executives, but I wouldn't say it's something we're doing constantly.
Well, that makes sense. So, I think to the original point with Juan Soto, and again, this is something we talk about. You guys had a couple of you guys picked the Yankees, a couple of guys picked the Mets. That's kind of where you were. I think it's funny. We talked about this a little bit during the playoffs. The Mets got pretty far without Juan Soto. And that number that you have for him, which certainly is realistic, I think, and a number that's been out there, that 600, that would get you a lot of players if you didn't have Juan Soto. And the Mets went pretty far without having him. And I love Juan Soto. He's a great player. I don't think there's any debating that in the game. But is he worth that money comparatively to some other terrific players on your list who are making literally fractions of that money? And yet you could call him a generational player, and maybe he is one, but are you better off spending that money somewhere else? I think that's the big question. And that's what these big market teams that might be in on him are going to have to weigh. And I'm fascinated by how this is going to play out.
For me, one of the huge questions with the Mets would be, where actually are they setting next year's payroll? I was just pulling up something that I wrote last week. But before making any additions, their competitive balance tax payroll is at roughly $165 million. But this year they spent $356 million.
Yeah.
So if you want to just keep that same payroll, they could add $190 million in 2025 average annual value. So you could very much sign Soto and a bunch of other awesome players and keep that same payroll. However, I think most of us don't feel that Steve Cohen's, brought in David Stearns to kind of run $350 million payrolls every year, or to sign the top 3 or 4 free agents every winter and stuff like that. So, if they're more like wanting to do a $300 million payroll, then yeah, signing Soto limits you in other places and you can't diversify as much. That is true.
I think you're right. I think it's got to be. I think what David Stearns is brought in to do is be strategic, and I think a lot of people wrote them off last year because they didn't make the big splash, but they got the right guys, and obviously that showed, especially down the stretch and in the postseason, that getting the Manayas and the Severinos and guys of that nature, those were the guys that ended up kind of carrying them, propelling them to where they went. And I think you'll see more of that from the Mets. And the question is Soto the strategic guy that they're going to go after and say, hey, this is a cornerstone guy. We're going to put the piece to the puzzle and then, go from there, and then the other thing, of course, in New York is, and that's where Lou and I are, although we try and make this a little bit more of a broad show, is that, Pete Alonso, obviously Pete isn't at the top of this list, at the tippy top, but he's still a big name free agent, and he's a powerful presence that has been a powerful presence in the Mets lineup since the minute he walked onto the field for them, 6 years ago. So what happens with Pete? Where does he go if he doesn't come? Does he come back to the Mets? Can he be with Soto? Is he? If not, where does he go? And if so, do you bring him back at literal, I think you had him for 125 million. I know that seems like they're asking for more. We'll see where that ends up. But what are your thoughts about Pete Alonso?
Well, my expectation with the Mets is that Stearns is going to run them somewhat like the Dodgers. And you'll notice that the Dodgers don't typically sign like the Willie Adamases of the world, but when there's a superstar player available, they're usually involved. And so I think our thinking, or most people's thinking with the Mets and Soto, is this is kind of a Shohei Ohtani type of thing where we got to go after this guy, even if maybe next year's number one free agent isn't as interesting. But on the Alonso topic, signing Alonso for the money that he seems like he is going to come out seeking does not seem like something Stearns would do. What we don't know is whether Cohen just kind of steps in and says, I want Pete Alonso. I'm a big fan of Pete Alonso. Just sign him, so there's an ownership factor that we can't quite predict. But, with Alonso, we debated the contract a lot. And I think we did come in on the low side with 5/125. We almost wanted to kind of, we used it like this is a verb. We wanted to Bellinger him. We just felt like, last winter we at least knew that Cody Bellinger would come out looking for a huge contract. We incorrectly predicted that somebody would give that to him. But of course, nobody was offering that. Nobody, I think, was even offering 150 million for Bellinger, and he had to take 380. And so we almost wanted to put 380 right onto Alonso. Like, well, if you go out there thinking you're a $175 million player, and none of the 30 teams think that whatsoever, then you might sit around until February or March and sign for 380. At which point, the Mets or any team might be more interested in that. But if Pete kind of lowers those expectations, I think below 150, one team that I think was a bit of a pet fit for us, with Alonso would be the Nationals, who I think are kind of trying to return to prominence and might be swayed by adding a big name and kind of a big power bat, and might be a little more. I think if you're trying to find Alonso fit, you need a bit of an old school team, just because he's not the type of player that the more modern front offices appreciate. Yeah,
and I think Alonso, for me, he's not Bellinger in that he's not 27, 28, 29. He's 30. Are you going to, even if he has an amazing year, do you want to give Alonso 6-7 years at premium money?
He's a real interesting guy in the free agent, in the grand scheme of it for me. I think you guys have noted it. Some of his metrics are definitely trending down. He's a college player who worked his way up through the system, so he's a little bit on the older side as far as this goes. And his batting average has fallen down. I know not everybody loves batting average anymore. I personally like it, but and you still use it as an indicator. He definitely is streaky when he's hot, very tough to get out. When he's cold, he's he struggles. But I think the one thing I would say with Pete, and I would say this in his favor as somebody who watches him play a lot, he's one of those guys, few guys that you could pencil in his numbers before the year as far as his home runs and RBIs. You kind of know what you're going to get from him. It's not a lot of guys like that where you can punch in those, and they're usually very good numbers, even if they are trending a little lower. He's a powerful presence as far as, if you're in a close game or it's the ninth inning and you're up by 3, your closer's in to close out the game, and the guy gets on base and Pete's in the hole. You want to get that guy out. You definitely don't want him coming up to tie with a chance of one swing where he ties the game. And the other thing I'm going to say in Pete's favor is Pete plays every day. In New York, you had the Judge Alonso thing for a lot of years. Judge has had a lot of injuries. Pete is always out there. Even when he got hurt a couple years ago with his wrist or whatever, he was back in a couple of weeks when he's supposed to be out for multiple weeks. And he is a gamer, and he's out there, and he might not be the best all-around player as far as defensively, running the bases, all those things. The guy, but you kind of know what you got in him, and he's going to be out there and be a part of, be a presence in your lineup.
Chris, you're talking like an agent.
Well,
yeah, I mean, there's no argument that he stays healthy, hits a lot of home runs. I think the problem is that he doesn't do anything else.
But I will say, if we're comparing him, in my opinion, Olsen is better than Alonso.
Olsen's a great first baseman, and and Freddie Freeman. Those are the contract comparables that we're looking at. But again, different circumstances. Pete has earned his free agency, right? He stuck it out. Freddie was a different situation, but the interest for Freddie really wasn't there. And Freddie, you're right though. Freddie is a better all-around player. He's a terrific fielder, hits for a lot higher average, also a presence in the lineup. So obviously, just won the World Series MVP. Sorry, Lou. So.
No, listen. There's no denying that. I just don't think, and again, putting on your agent hat is, you're Scott Boras. You have Juan Soto and Pete Alonso. The Mets want Soto. Pete wants to stay with the Mets. He's not gonna sign for $15 million a year. What you as an agent? What do you do?
Well, listen, I think you gotta check the market and see who's out there and who else is interested and what the interest is and what the levels are and who's willing to pay. Scott traditionally goes for the bigger contracts and the most money, and and he's not wrong in doing that. I think most agents do that. That's why Pete, is with Scott. He went to Scott because he wants to maximize his opportunity here where he's going to make the money, and he feels like that's where he's going to do it. So I think you got to look at the market, see what's out there. I think if I'm running the Mets, I might be looking at Pete and maybe, some other areas that they're going to have of need, and think like, hey, we went pretty far without Juan, and I think we could run it back and do it again, and we could, add some pitching, fix our bullpen a little, and do some of the little things that might get them, to a Game 7 and beyond with a team like the Dodgers. But we also have to look at the Mets are in a tough division with two teams that were banged up and struggled. Braves were just decimated with injuries, and they'll be back and they'll be strong. And the Phillies, the Mets caught them. For sure. I think the Phillies, but the Phillies were a little nicked up too. So, the Mets have definitely some big decisions to make, and this is going to be a really telling offseason for them.
So Tim, speaking of Philly, we heard rumors now that they're looking to trade Alec Baum. What are your thoughts on that?
I think I could see them trading Bohm. Perhaps maybe not fully happy with his defense or something like that. I think also that the Phillies, they just have a ton of money committed already. I'm not sure what we have Bohm projected to make next year offhand, but I think it could be a way to, remove a little salary off the books, but get something good back. It would kind of create an opening at third, though. So I don't know. I feel like it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing too. I think they had, they got killed by the Mets, and I think that now they're looking at themselves. Are we maybe they're not that versatile, offensively as they would like, and this is a guy who struggled right in the postseason. But I think at the end of the day, I'm with you. I think he stays. What's your alternative?
The Phillies are tricky. I think we took some flack from some of our readers because we did not predict them to sign a bunch of the top free agents. That doesn't really mean that we don't think that they'll be competitive, though. It just, when we're doing those team picks, there's just teams I think we liked more. But I think that they're a team that seems like it's going to want to try to move some money that could be active in the trade market. So it's kind of hard to figure out like a path for them. I think a lot of fans wanted to see, them signing maybe Teoscar Hernandez, somebody like that. I think it's a little tough when you're tied into Kyle Schwarber and Nick Castellanos already, but maybe you can move some of those contracts off the books.
Tim, any chance the Phillies get involved in Juan Soto?
I mean, yeah, in a sense of, Dave Dombrowski is always kind of hunting for the big fish, the star players, and I think their ownership has that outlook as well.
Yep, I think so too.
For them to kind of say, we know we have a ton of money on the books, but this is, once in a lifetime, we got to go after this guy anyway. It's plausible to me, yeah.
I think the Phillies are a sleeper there, in my opinion, but we'll see. Listen, Tim, we could probably go on and on for hours and hours. I know you're busy. I want to thank you for coming on and talking to us and chatting us up on everything. I want to make sure all the our viewers and listeners check out MLB Trade Rumors. It is the best. I'm telling you from the pro side. We're telling you from the fan side. And Tim, the one thing I wanted to just give you a chance. I know you have a subscription service. Can you explain real quick to our audience about that? Yeah.
We that's kind of for the hardcore MLB Trade Rumors reader. We're doing a bunch of exclusive articles for our paid subscribers. Our off-season outlook series that we've been doing for a really long time. That was for paid subscribers. We do exclusive chats. It removes the ads. We have a lot of cool tools such as our MLB contract tracker, which I think is better than anything you can find. And so it's got a ton of perks for $30 a year. So if you're kind of an MLB Trade Rumors reader and you're on the fence, I think it's a great value.
That's a great bar. It's a great bargain for sure.
It is. It's a great site. Everybody make sure you check it out. Tim Dierkes, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you coming on, and wish you all the continued success. And we'll see where your prognostications come through.
Yes.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Thanks, Tim.
Appreciate you.
Yep.
All right. That was great. Tim is an awesome guy, and I thought he added some great insight.
He did. Amazing.
I'm sorry I keep freezing up here. I'm not really sure what's going on. But Lou, so I think, listen, very interesting stuff. We really just scratched the surface on it, but it was great to have Tim kind of give his thoughts on things. And obviously with the elephant in the room, Juan Soto, that's something that is going to be obviously the story of this offseason at MLB, but there are some other great players. We're talking about some very good pitching, some big bats.
Yeah,
and bats that are like he just mentioned, like Teoscar Hernandez, who is going to be out there again, who obviously did a great job for the Dodgers this year, and obviously put up great numbers for Toronto before that, and guys like that, Anthony Santander. There's some really 40+ home run guy this year, a former client of mine. There are just good players out there. Minaya had such a great year and bounced back. Obviously Corbin, Burns, and Snell, and some of these top pitchers. So it's going to be fun to sit back and see how things play out and how each of these moves affect the other ones, and how each of these teams and it's almost a little musical chairs. Who's going to be left, standing without a chair at the end of the day? And
I really think that. I think that this is going to be a fun offseason. This is not going to be last year. I think I could be wrong, but I think you might see Soto go during the winter meetings. There's so many good free agents. there's so many possible trade scenarios. I mean, we're going to be talking about this for months because, and we'll hopefully get Tim back to discuss more, but it's too much to pack it into one show, because I think this is going to be something that's going to be ongoing, and then you're going to see the dominoes fall. You're going to see a lot of trades. Like, to your point, people who kind of got left standing, maybe now go the free agent route. Go the trade route and see who, you're hearing Nolan Arenado's name pop up now.
Yeah.
Gray's name pop up. So this is going to be pretty interesting.
Oh, those are interesting names. Arenado's a name that's certainly something that, again, he's another guy, a little bit older. People will say his numbers or his metrics are declining a little bit. Obviously,
a little bit.
All-time great defensive player. Obviously, also has put up great offensive numbers. Yeah. Is he a guy that maybe goes to a new team and has a renewed energy and brings something different to the table? I mean, I don't know, but certainly a great player and on a Hall of Fame trajectory type of guy. Does he have get moved and end up somewhere where he pushes somebody to the top? I mean, I certainly wouldn't be shocked at that. So I think, like you said, there's so many different things out there, and this is just the beginning. So it's fun to speculate and guess kind of how things are going to play out. So I'm excited to see this off season and take kind of step back and see how this is going to all play out, including a lot of things we talked about earlier. So we'll keep talking about it, and obviously this is what we'll be discussing over the weeks and months to come on our Agent and the Fan podcast.
Yes, sir. So let's see what happens. Go Soto to the Yanks. Let's make it happen. Chris, make that phone call.
That's not my phone call to make. Sorry, but I wish it was. That would have been nice. But no, I think So that's the story on our free agent episode. The Miami Minute, I'm gonna have to postpone this week. I'm in mourning.
Yeah, I didn't want to say anything.
I know the Hurricanes lost, tough game. Our man Cam Ward, he's pulled a rabbit out of the hat multiple times this year. This past week he wasn't able to do that, unfortunately, and they fell back to the pack. But on a positive note, the Miami Hurricanes football team has their own fate in their own hands, and they control their destiny, which is all you could ask for, especially from a team that had a losing record last year. So where we are, yes, I would love to be in a better position, but where we are right now is still a good position as far as I'm concerned. And if they can win their last couple of games and win the ACC championship, they'll be in a great position in the national playoff, and we'll see what happens from there.
That was the Miami Minute.
Oh, well, there you go. I did it anyway. But there you go. It was a minute. All right. Anyway, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate to our subscribers, followers, and everybody. And thanks to Tim Dierkes for joining us today from MLB Trade Rumors. Great site. Check it out. Lou, I'll see you soon. Take care, everybody.
You got it, man. Take care.